Hello, everybody. I am Al.
And I am Boomer.
Boomer, why do you always laugh like that every time you say it's Boomer?
I don't know, because it's funny.
Anyway, today we are going to be working on chapters 1 to 3 of Man in the Pond, and this is going to be a revised version from what was posted on the YouTube channel as part of 100 Days of Halloween last year. Right now, the 100 Days of Halloween videos are all privatized. I don't know what to do with them. Boomer and I did put a lot of work into making those, but we did make some horrible jokes, so I really don't know what to do with them. But yeah, Man in the Pond is going to be its own isolated project now. And this is going to be a revised version from what was posted then. As you can see here, this is the cover. The front cover of Man in the Pond. We're going to do chapters 1 to 3, just for now. And what I'm thinking about doing with Man in the Pond is doing 3 chapters once a week. And uploading every Friday.
Sounds like a good idea to me, Al. I'm gonna have some popcorn.
Yeah, the only reason that we're eating popcorn right now while working on this is because I've been having a lot of problems with my sinuses draining down my throat and triggering my gag reflex. I have to eat something to make that problem go away. But it only helps in the short term, unfortunately. The decongestant pills I was taking don't really seem like they help anymore. And I don't get why I have this problem. I've had this problem my whole life and I'm sick of it.
Yeah, I bet you are, Al. I can't imagine what it would be like to always have a sensitive gag reflex whenever your sinuses drain down your throat.
Yeah, it's horrible. Anyway, I am going to get started with chapter 1 of Man in the Pond. Okay, here is chapter 1. Nate's Bar and Grill stood mostly empty on a lonely stretch of road just a few miles away from the abandoned house of a deceased serial killer named Ricky Rock Stonehenge. The bar itself was known to be haunted as well, hence the lack of business, but the back pond of the empty house was a far more terrifying place. Paranormal investigators Keisha, Evie, Tyler, and Steve pulled their big, white minivan into an empty parking spot between a Harley and a baby blue pickup as they prepared to go inside to ask the locals a few questions about the killer's pond. Dark gray clouds filled the evening sky above as they parked the van and got out. And powerful winds blew Keisha's curly black hair into her eyes as she jumped out the front passenger side door. From the back, Steve and Tyler jumped out, and their rock and roll t-shirts rustled around their torsos. Evie was the driver, and her red ponytail flapped around behind her head as the sky started spitting out raindrops. Laughing like maniacs, Steve and Tyler watched as a camera flash lit up the clouds, only to be followed by a deafening thunderclap. Though Steve was 30 and muscular, he was as bald as Mr. Clean, and he laughed again when he felt the big water droplets land on his head.
I can do that too! See? Roar!
Tyler's long, dark hair blew across his forehead and around his ears as he laughed at Steve. "The storm's a lot scarier than you, dude." Adjusting the glasses on her face as she and Keisha bolted for the safety of the bar, Evie glanced back to give the guys a dirty look. "Get inside, you morons!" Keisha looked fearfully up at the sky. "You're gonna get struck by lightning!" Steve turned and laughed at the girls. "Then I'll strike the storm back!" Another flash lit up the sky, and Tyler laughed when the thunder boomed like a cannon up above. "Knock it on its ass, Steve! Knock it on its ass!" Steve and Tyler hurried towards the front door just as a big burly guy in a sleeveless leather jacket with a massive beard burst out of the bar carrying a plastic tablecloth. "Crap! Hang on, baby!" The girls stepped aside as he hurried over to the Harley and threw his tarp over the top of it. Raining hard now, the downpour soaked the biker as he was adjusting it. When the biker rejoined the four investigators, Steve laughed again. "Is your baby okay?" The biker gave him a grin and a thumbs up. "Hell yeah! And just in freaking time, too. My name's Larry, by the way." Larry the biker opened the door and held it for Evie and Keisha, allowing them to pass. "After you, ladies!" The girls thanked Larry as they passed by, and then Steve and Tyler followed the big guy inside. The four investigators looked around at all the empty tables and chairs, and the 3 pool tables that were placed here and there throughout the room. There were also a couple dartboards on the walls, amidst the posters of beer advertisements and beautiful women, as well as the head of a buck with a massive set of antlers mounted on the wall. Kind of misspoken that a little bit there.
At least you fixed it, Al.
Oh yeah. You know, I gotta say, I wasn't vegan when I wrote this, but as a vegan now, I really am not liking the head of a buck mounted on the wall. I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
Other than the biker, there were only 3 other people in the building. One of them was an old drunk sitting at the bar with a tall mug in his hand, gray hair, a matching mustache, and an old baseball hat on his head. There was also a female bartender behind the counter, and the cook was in the back somewhere, digging through a freezer for more bags of frozen crinkle fries. Glancing at Evie and Keisha, Larry the biker asked, "Which of you ladies is single?" Evie crossed her arms over the front of her university t-shirt and glared at him without saying a word. But Keisha raised her hand and laughed nervously. "Me!" Chuckling, Larry invited her over to the bar for one drink, while Steve took a seat beside the old guy, who casually glanced at them after taking another sip from his mug. Evie and Tyler wanted to speak with the bartender, so they could ask her some questions about the Stonehenge house and get to the bottom of what was going on in the haunted pond out back. While Keisha was hanging out with Larry, Steve kept an eye on them since he was the tough guy of the group, and because Keisha was his cousin Evie's best friend since childhood. The old guy at the bar wasn't much for chit-chat, but his friends provided lots of valuable intel regardless. The bartender wore modest clothing, but with a t-shirt displaying her favorite country star. As soon as Evie and Tyler plopped down on a pair of bar stools, she walked over to them, causing the long, dark braid that hung down over the front of her shoulder to sway a little before slipping around her arm towards the back. Smirking at them, the bartender said, "What brings you out to the boondocks in this weather?" Evie smiled back at her. "We're paranormal investigators." The bartender flashed her a grin. "So, you here to investigate the bar or the Stonehenge house? Tyler gave a timid shrug and laughed nervously. Both, if possible. Her grin fading away into a frown, the bartender said, "You'd be better off just coming here after hours. Stay away from that house. The pond back there is bad news." Evie smirked. "Bad news is what I live for. Besides, my friends only call me Evie because I can get kind of evil myself sometimes." The bartender didn't laugh. Instead, she raised her eyebrows in surprise, but then she shook her head at the young 20-something girl like she was an ignorant fool. Clearing his throat, Tyler added, "We passed a sold sign on the way here. Somebody's moving in, I'm guessing?" The bartender nodded, causing her long braid to sway a little behind her back. "A couple with 2 kids are moving in. All we can do is pray they get out of that dump before it's too late." Getting the hint, Evie closed her eyes and shook her head sadly. "We heard about the kid who died from the brain-eating amoeba in that pond." Tyler let out a sad sigh and gave the counter under his arms a 1,000-yard stare. "Yeah, I wish we could have stopped it, but we didn't know about it until after we did the research." "Yeah, well, no one could have," the bartender said. "If you want to talk to ghosts here, fine. Ron's into the ghost stuff too. Just please don't go to that house." Then the old man who was sitting with Steve threw in his own 2 cents. "I heard there might be a demon in that pond." Glancing at him, Evie said, "Jesus will protect us." Picking up his mug, the old man scoffed before taking a small sip. "Yeah, right." Hearing the old man's comment, Larry glanced at him. "I'm a Jesus man myself. If you do go to the Stonehenge house, I'll pray for you." Keisha held her fists up in the air triumphantly. "Hallelujah!" Steve laughed and pounded his fist on the counter in front of him. "We'll call it the Biker's Prayer!" "I love it," Larry laughed. Rolling her eyes, the bartender said, "I'm a skeptic too, Buster, but I've heard things go bump in the night and saw lights flickering here. No rats or cockroaches, though." "Have you seen anything when driving past the house?" Keisha asked. Furrowing her eyebrows at Keisha, the bartender planted her hands, I gotta turn the page, firmly on the hips of her jeans. "I don't even want to look. Just be careful." Keisha frowned at her, but then the bartender's expression softened a little. "My name's April, by the way. I'll talk to the owner's son about you guys doing an investigation here." Keisha smiled at April once she no longer looked irritated. "Ron is the son, I'm guessing?" April's smile returned, and she nodded. "Old Nate is retired. He just comes in to shoot pool with the boys sometimes." Buster took another swig of his beer and scoffed again. "Retired or not, the old man can still kick my ass at pool." Everyone laughed at his joke, but then Larry spoke up again and said, "If you go into the Stonehenge house, I can come too, maybe. An extra hand can't hurt." Tyler was curious about the new family that was about to move in, so he asked April another question. "When do the new people move in? Anybody know?" Larry gave him a shrug. "Dunno. Sometime tomorrow, maybe?" Realizing they may have to act quickly, the paranormal investigation team decided to go check out the pond the next morning, before the family could arrive. The drive out to the small town of Carlton, just 40 miles southwest of Sun City, Illinois, had taken them 3 hours from the apartments, where they did all their research, so they needed some rest before springing into action. They invited Larry to join them as well, just in case they needed help, but neither April nor Buster were interested in the topic anymore, so they quickly changed the subject.
"So, Al, where is Sun City, Illinois?"
Well, Sun City is a fictional city that exists in the story of Twist. Sun City is going to be very important in the coming stories. So will Carlton. Carlton will be featured in future stories as well. And the reason why that is because the town of Carlton and the city of Sun City and a few other fictional towns that I've come up with, they exist in a stretch of land across Illinois that's basically cursed with all kinds of evil. Not just supernatural evil either, but just evil in general. So, that's why Sun City and Carlton are so important. Okay, now we move on to Chapter 2. Heavy rain continued to pelt the small town of Carlton, while lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The paranormal investigators stayed at the bar until it slowed to a steady drizzle before piling into the van and returning to their motel room about 15 miles away in a nearby city. The rays of the setting sun started to peek through the dreary sky as they passed by the Stonehenge house. Keisha, Steve, and Tyler were laughing and talking excitedly, but Evie casually glanced at the former serial killer's property, only to be surprised by the moving van, small red car, and the brown pickup truck sitting in the driveway. Evie tapped the brakes. Holy crap! As soon as the van slowed, all the others looked over as well. Sure enough, the new family had arrived much sooner than anyone expected, and they were getting out of the vehicles. A woman and 2 kids came out of the car, and 2 men came out from the pickup and the moving van. Evie passed the house, but soon turned around at a nearby intersection. Fearing the possibility of a disaster being unleashed upon the family, she wanted to give them a fair warning. So when their van pulled into the driveway behind the pickup, the family turned to look. The moment the paranormal investigators got out of their vehicle, the guy who opened the back of the moving van walked over. He was skinny as a rail, with a scruffy blonde beard, a cowboy hat, and a t-shirt that said, "World's Best Uncle" on it. "Can I help you guys?" he asked. Steve waved to him as the 4 of them approached the family.
"We're paranormal investigators!"
The uncle rolled his eyes. "Look, we heard the stories about the place. They're full of crap." Keisha furrowed her eyebrows at him. "What about the brain-eating amoeba? Was that full of crap too?" Smiling at them, the uncle said, "It was a germ! The pond is filled with algae and it's disgusting." Then the kid's father walked over. He looked a lot like his brother, but his t-shirt said "World's Best Dad" on it, and he had no beard or hat. "Copper sulfate should help," the father said. "I already told the kids not to swim in it." The uncle laughed. "See? The kids are fine." Glancing at his brother, the father said, "Let me talk to these guys for a bit. I'll come help in a few." Offering the investigators a handshake, he introduced himself. "I'm Albert. You said you were paranormal investigators?" "Yes," Evie replied. Frowning suddenly, causing a small crease to form on his chin, he said, "You think the pond might be haunted?" "Possibly," Tyler told him. "Is it okay if we check it out?" Albert held up his hand, interrupting him. "No, absolutely not. I don't want my family or the new house on TV. Those ghost hunting shows are just money grabs anyway."
"It's not going to be on TV," Steve told him. "We just want your family to be safe is all."
"If we find something strange, we can cleanse the pond our way," Evie said. "Then you can do it your way." Albert chuckled and scratched at his eyebrow. "How about I call you if we see anything? You got a number?" Tyler handed him a business card. "Here you go." Albert took the business card from him. "Thanks. I'll be in touch." Then the investigators got back in their van and left. Albert and his brother watched them curiously as they sped off down the road before going about their business. And now we've got a little pause here with 4 stars, where the next part of the chapter focuses solely on the family that's moving into the house. Albert looked down at the card in his hand just as the white van disappeared from view down the road. His brother called out to him for help, so with a scoff, he flicked the card into a puddle of muddy water. "Kids!" Albert shouted as he returned to the moving van. "Let's get our stuff in before it rains again! Another storm's coming tonight!" The oldest kid was 15, and he was wearing the same cowboy hat as his uncle, and he also had the same blonde hair as both of them. When he was helping them move boxes so they could get the couch and recliners out, he grabbed a box that had his sister's stuff in it. Little Annie was half his age, so the box had colorful butterflies drawn on the side in crayon, and her name was written on the top, where the tape crisscrossed over the flaps. The mother and sister had dark brown hair and were wearing sweaters. The woman had a dark green one, and the girl had a red one covered in tiny pink ice cream cones. "Thanks, Martin," Annie cried. "You can put it by the closet." Smiling at his little sister, he said, "Sure thing!" Taking the box inside, while his father and uncle each grabbed a third of the sofa, quickly pocketing the bolts and brackets needed to put it together in the process, he took Annie's stuff down a short hall past the living room before going into the bedroom. It had a window facing the backyard with a set of shelves next to it. The closet was on the adjacent wall to the right. Setting the box by the closet like his sister asked, he then went over to the window and looked out. There was a massive oak tree by the gas pig, but the algae-filled pond was to the left. Surrounded by cattails with caked-on, dry muck stuck to them, it gave him an eerie feeling. Looking at it in disgust, Martin said, "Gross." Then something standing in the cattails caught his eye. The clouds in the sky made it difficult to see, causing him to squint. When he finally realized it was a skinny man with long, stringy gray hair hanging to his shoulders, grinning at him with rotten, pointy teeth and dark pits in his eyes, Martin gasped. The man in the pond also had a gold medallion hanging from a chain around his neck. Okay, I'm going to take a little break before I get on to chapter 3 here. Have a little popcorn. Maybe take a little drink. Sounds good, Al. Okay. Here's chapter 3. Martin burst out of the house just as his uncle and father were carrying a section of their sofa up the driveway. "Dad! Uncle Rob! I saw a creepy dude hanging out by the pond!" Annie's eyes opened wide when she saw the look of terror on her breathless brother's face. "By the pond?" "Yeah!" Martin cried. "He was standing by the cattails!" His Uncle Rob glared down at the section of the couch he was carrying. "Better not be one of those ghost hunter freaks." "If it is," said Albert, as he followed his brother up to the front porch, "they can stare down the barrel of your 9mm until the cops show." The kids calmed down a little, knowing the adults believed Martin's story and were willing to protect them. Despite this fact, Annie was still scared. "Please go look, Daddy. He might be here to hurt us." After taking the pieces of the sofa inside and setting them down by the entryway, Albert and Rob went back to the pickup, where they retrieved an axe and the 9mm handgun. "This will have to do," Rob said as he retrieved the gun from an ammo box behind the front seats and reloaded it. 12 gauge is in the mover," Albert said as he hefted the axe. "What does the guy look like, Martin?" the mother asked. Martin quickly described the guy's appearance before shouting, "And he was wearing a medallion!" Hurrying to the pond out back, Albert chopped away at the cattails, while his brother aimed his gun, looking to put a bullet through some weirdo's head. Finding nothing, Albert cussed loudly. "He's gone! Don't fall in now!" Rob told his brother. "That water's nasty!" "I found boot prints!" Albert yelled. "He must have ran off, but there's only one set of prints!" Rob cussed at the news as well. Hurrying back to the driveway out front, the two men discovered that Albert's wife Lisa had gone inside with the kids. Thunder rumbled off in the distance, so giving up on moving their stuff inside, they made the decision to hurry into the kitchen and use their smartphones to call 911. Once they made sure everyone was safe, they called the police to have them look for the creep who was hanging out in the cattails. Okay. Now we've got ourselves another pause with 4 stars. So, we're going to continue on with chapter 3. We're almost done. Well, it's about halfway through, I think, for this chapter. Back at the motel, Evie had a folder open on the table by the TV containing all of their pictures and research on Ricky Stonehenge. His hair was stringy, his teeth rotted, his wife-beater stained, and his golden medallion hung down over his chest. "We have to get to that pond," Keisha grumbled angrily from where she was sitting on the bed in her pink PJs and slippers. "That family could be in danger." Evie glanced up at her friend from the chair she was sitting on while going over their intel all over again. "What can we do? We don't have the money to throw at them like the investigators on TV." Letting out a sigh and blowing a curly strand of hair away from her forehead, Keisha said, "I guess we should check out the bar instead. I mean, that place is haunted too, and April said that Ron guy would be okay with it." Through the wall next door, the girls could hear Steve and Tyler discussing their next move while making sure their cameras and audio recording devices were good to go the following day. Unfortunately for Albert and his family, if they were unwilling to cooperate with the investigation, the demon in the pond would force them to ask for help regardless. Slamming the folder shut, Evie shuddered. "That guy's creepy to look at." Frowning at her friend, Keisha said, "I'm just glad Carol Wright stopped him from hurting anyone else. The only thing is, I really wish he could have redeemed himself in prison." Evie got up from the chair and plopped down on the bed beside her best friend in the whole world. She was also wearing her own PJs, except hers were yellow and covered in tiny little teddy bears. Putting her arms around Keisha, she said, "I know, but he would have killed more children. He had to be stopped." Hugging Evie back, Keisha asked, "How do people get away with it like that? Released on a technicality. Shouldn't even matter." After hugging one another for a minute or so, Evie reminded her that the spirit in the pond wasn't finished yet. "Now a demon has replaced him. My only hope is that God will let him be redeemed in hell. I have to believe that only those who choose to stay evil remain forever." Keisha chuckled a little and smiled at Evie. "Always the optimist, aren't you?" Evie laughed. "I find it hard to believe that God would sentence people to burn for eternity without making exceptions for those who genuinely have a change of heart." "It's a nice idea," Keisha told her, "but the Bible doesn't suggest that." Evie shrugged. "Maybe the people who wrote the Gospels and Revelations thought it was impossible for them to change." Keisha's smile faded as she looked into her friend's eyes. "Maybe. Anyway, I'm tired, and we're going back to the bar tomorrow." "Me too," Evie said with a smile. "Hopefully the spirits there aren't as nasty as Mr. Stonehenge." Keisha yawned, but then she chuckled a little. "I hope you're right." Then they brushed their teeth and laid down on the queen-sized bed the room came with, where they did their best to get some sleep before meeting Ron at his retired father's bar. All right. And the next chapter is chapter 4. So, this video is pretty much done. We were only going to focus on chapters 1 to 3 of Man in the Pond. So, if you liked this video, hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I apologize for not being vegan at the time that I wrote this story and putting a deer's head mounted on the wall. But, you know what? I'm still happy with the story overall anyways. So, I'm going to end the video here. Eddie!